On July 20th, 1969, Buzz Aldrin became the second human being to stand on the surface that was not Earth. He spent 2 hours and 15 minutes on the moon. He planted a flag. He collected samples. He looked up at the planet he had come from, a blue point suspended into nothing, and experienced something so far outside the range of ordinary cognition that he would spend the rest of his life failing to describe it. He called this experience magnificent desolation. 6 months later, he could not get out of bed. 30 years earlier, on the other side of the Atlantic, a different man arrived at a different threshold. Dietrich Bonhoeffer reached Union Theological Seminary in New York on June 12, 1939. He was 33 years old, a Lutheran pastor, a theologian of genuine distinction, a leader in the Confessing Church, the arm of German Protestantism that had refused to submit to the Nazi control. His friends had spent months arranging the visit. Reinhold Niebuhr was the most prominent theologian in America, and he had secured the invitation personally. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. It was to stay safe, wait out the war, and survive. Bonhoeffer knew what was coming. Everyone did. The regime was tightening its grip on every institution he cared about. He was too visible, too vocal, and too useful alive to risk remaining. So he agreed to the plan. He crossed the Atlantic, and within days of arriving in a small room during a New York heat wave with the seminary campus empty for summer, he understood that he had made a mistake. His diary from those weeks records a man in a state of calm, escalating distress. Not fear of what he had left behind, fear of what he had become by leaving. "I did not understand why I'm here," he wrote. He read. He also prayed. He corresponded with people who could not help him, because the thing he needed was not advice. It was a decision his own body already knew and his mind had not yet caught up to. So on July 7th, 1939, merely 25 days after arriving, Bonhoeffer boarded the last scheduled steamer crossing the Atlantic. He was going back. He wrote to Niebuhr, "I shall have no right to participate in the reconstruction of Christian life in Germany after the war if I do not share the trials of this time with my people." The diary entry from this last day in New York was quieter. He wrote that he had learned something important about all future decisions. He did not say what it was, but the diary makes it clear enough. He had learned that the threshold follows you. It does not care about your geography. It cares about the distance between who you are and who you are failing to become. 24 hours after the ticker tape parade ended, Buzz Aldrin sat in a room in Houston and tried to remember what he was supposed to do next. There was no mission. There was no next mission. There was no structure waiting. NASA had given him the greatest assignment in human history, and then, with the quiet efficiency of a government agency that had accomplished its objective, moved on. "I wanted to resume my duties," he said later, "but there were no duties to resume. There was no goal, no sense of calling, no project worth pouring myself into." So he began drinking. His marriage came apart. He took a position at Edwards Air Force Base, hoping that military structure would restore something. It did not. In early 1972, Aldrin did something no public figure of his stature had done in that era. He told the truth. In Los Angeles Times, he disclosed his depression. He published his autobiography the following year and titled it "Return to Earth." The title was not a description of his spacecraft re-entering the atmosphere. It was a description of what he had been trying and failing to do since July 24th, 1969. The man who had crossed the furthest threshold in human history could not find his way home from the other side of it. Bonhoeffer returned to Germany, and within weeks the war began. He joined the Abwehr, German military intelligence, and used his position as cover for resistance activity, including involvement in plans to assassinate Adolf Hitler. He was arrested by the Gestapo on April 5, 1943, and spent 2 years in prison. On April 9, 1945, at Flossenbürg concentration camp, 2 weeks before it was liberated by American forces, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was hanged. His last recorded words were, and I quote, "This is the end for me. For me, the beginning of life." An SS doctor who had witnessed the execution wrote that in 50 years of medical practice he had, and I quote, hardly ever seen a man die so entirely submissive to the will of God. There is a version of Bonhoeffer in an alternate timeline who maybe would have stayed in New York. That version would have survived the war. That version would have taught at Union Theological Seminary. That version would have published theological works and lived a long and distinguished academic life. That version would have been safe and productive and historically minor. Buzz Aldrin did not find his way back to the moon. There was no way back. What he found eventually over decades was something else, a version of himself that could only have been built on the other side of the disillusion. Not the man who walked on the moon, the man who survived what walking on the moon had done to him. He called the lunar surface magnificent desolation. He could have been describing the other side of any threshold worth crossing. The magnificence is real, the disillusion is also real. Both are true at the same time, and neither cancels the other.